sé que un día volverá. Triste pena, ya déjalo ya.
I'm Chance Dorland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from ExpressNews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. A San Antonio man who confessed to being a serial killer has been sentenced to 2 life terms in the rape and strangulation deaths of 5 women. And I'm joined now by San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala to get the latest details on the case. So Liz, as always, great to have you here on the program. Let's start with a look at the victims in this case, 5 women ranging from 15 to 46 years of age.
Yes, this is a case actually, Chance, that several of us have been following in the newsroom on the crime beat for several years. He is a really interesting story for many reasons. It's just tragic for all of the people that he has admitted now to killing.
Now here I'm just getting back, and I wanted to bring you our city's awareness as far as this fake media and what's happening here and who's leading this. Now, that was the Pat Maloney law firm that's sponsoring these people talking about serial killings. And I mean, if the guy's going to have an appeal or whatever, you know what I mean? But they're trying to put it into where this is just something that's going to be happening in our city or even our state or even our nation without being acknowledged. And that's why I'm trying to bring you that awareness. I want you to watch this. It was in Uvalde, Texas.
First at 5, people in Uvalde tonight trying to understand why a 12-year-old allegedly shot and killed a young professional boxer.
Uvalde police say the person wearing black seen running from the scene last night is the boy now charged in the death of John Dwayne Van Meter.
Jesse DeGollado reports on the murder and the up-and-coming boxer.
A name well known at 24 to boxing fans, especially in Uvalde. John Van Meter's family says he just turned pro last year, winning his first fight. Originally from California, we're told his adopted hometown was proud he'd come this far, having already helped train other young boxers. But Van Meter's promising career ended at his front door. His girlfriend later told police someone had been trying to kick in the door. When Van Meter opened it, police say he was shot in the head, allegedly by a 12-year-old boy, now charged with capital murder. Uvalde Police Chief Daniel Rodriguez says despite the speculation on social media, the reason why is unclear.
That we know of, there is no history between both of them.
Van Meter died soon after arriving at the local hospital. The town of Uvalde is said to be stunned not only by his death, but by the fact that a 12-year-old boy is accused of his murder.
Why that house? Why him? You know, what was he doing with the gun at that age?
That and much more is exactly what Uvalde police and Texas Rangers want to know. As you can see, someone has already left a simple purple bow in Van Meter's memory here at the boxing gym where he spent so much of his time. Now, coming up at 6, we'll hear more from people who saw him and his father on a regular basis.
The kid was 12 years old. And he's going to be probably tried as an adult. That's what I told you back in 2010 when the little boy killed his father. And we went to juvenile judge Lisa Jarrett as advocates to see if we can try to divert this. But this is why we're in Washington, and even when we went to Cleveland to address this opioid crisis and try to make sure that we get our case study from Texas and what we took to Senator John Cornyn, and while we're there, this is what happened to another little kid.
Is this a bored child or a threat to public safety? Someone who saw him pacing around a Cleveland park was worried enough to call the police.
The guy keeps pulling it in out. It's probably fake, but you know what? It's scaring the guy.
A patrol car arrives at the scene, and seconds later...
Shots fired.
male down, black male, maybe 20, black handgun.
Tamir Rice, who was 12 years old, died later in hospital. His family wanted these recordings released, and the police obliged.
This is not an effort to exonerate. It's not an effort to show the public that anybody did anything wrong.
Police say Tamir was told 3 times to raise his hands, but his family questions the speed of the incident. It is our belief that this situation could have been avoided and that Tamir should still be here with us. The video shows one thing distinctly: the police officers reacted quickly. This comes at a time when the country is at boiling point over the treatment of young African Americans by white police. People are furious at the grand jury decision not to prosecute a white police officer who killed Michael Brown. Since his death in August, more than a dozen teenagers have been killed by police. Half were African Americans, many carrying pellet guns, like Tamir's. Laura Westbrook, BBC News.
So it's showing this age group, it's identifying these kids. And I'm going to show you here later in the program where these people here in Texas tell you what's happening. And yet we're not getting a resolve or getting any type of remedy in what we tried to say back in with Mary Jane and Diane in 2007. We did the Parents' Bill of Rights. But we're having to deal with this crisis today. And this is becoming a horrific crisis. It's a mental health. They're putting these kids on this, well, I don't know how they're making it prosperous because they're kids. Let's watch this.
The last court proceeding on this matter was actually just this past Friday. The judge now has 20 days to determine whether or not the young boy will be tried as an adult. 2 families now awaiting a decision in a case that has stunned a small town in Pennsylvania.
About a year old right now.
1 year ago, Debbie Hauk was looking forward to the arrival of a grandchild. Her daughter, Kenzie, was expecting a baby boy.
What's the mud?
Hauk never imagined this would end up being the only place to visit them.
It should have been her.
Last February, Kenzie Hauk was shot to death. She was 8.5 months pregnant.
You feel like in the winter you want to go take blankets and cover her because I know she's froze. But she's not there. And I got to realize that.
As Kenzie's family struggles with her loss, Chris Brown says his world has also been shattered. He was Kenzie's fiancé, the father of her expectant child. And one more thing, Brown is also the father of the suspected killer, 12-year-old Jordan Brown.
I get up and go to work and come home and lose everything. You know, Kenzie, the baby, now Jordan's facing potential life in prison without the possibility of parole as an adult.
Jordan was an 11-year-old fifth grader at the time of the killings. Now 12, he could be tried as an adult. If convicted, it's believed Jordan would be one of the youngest ever sentenced to life, a punishment Kenzie's family says he deserves, when his father says he does not.
Anybody being put in my position would have to ask themselves, what would you do? Would you turn your back on your own son because somebody else believes he's guilty? Not me.
If it means him going to prison for life, like I said, he's serving 1 life sentence. He took 2 lives.
A year ago, Jordan lived in this farmhouse in western Pennsylvania with his father. Kenzie also lived there with her 2 daughters from a previous relationship. Prosecutors say February 20th last year, before leaving for school, Jordan got his youth model 20-gauge shotgun, walked into Hauk's bedroom, and shot her in the back of the head while she slept. According to police, after Jordan shot Kenzie, he took the spent shell casing and threw it out into the woods. Then they say he just walked out to the road and caught the school bus. Prosecutors say his possible motive for the killing, Jordan was close to his father and may have been jealous of Kenzie, an allegation his father strongly denies. Every day he visits Jordan at the juvenile detention center where he's being held.
He still asks about Kenzie. He sheds tears, he cries. He misses her, he misses the girls.
Under Pennsylvania law, anyone over age 10 accused of criminal homicide is charged as an adult. The state has about 450 juveniles currently serving life sentences. According to juvenile justice experts we spoke with, nationally, there are more than 2,500. Jordan's fate will be decided any day now by a judge.
He's never lied to me about anything. I have no reason to believe that he's lying right now.
Maybe he loves you so much he doesn't want to disappoint you?
No, I've had private talks with Jordan. Had he had any knowledge of what happened that horrible day, he would have told me.
If Jordan is tried and convicted as a juvenile, he will be able to walk free at age 21. A sobering thought for Kenzie's family.
To put him away as a child and him be out at 21 is absurd. But we're not the judge, so.
I've lost my daughter and my grandson. Death is final. Ain't nothing gonna bring her back or and justice needs to be served.
Bye, Mommy. Bye, baby Christopher. I love you, Mommy. Love you, baby Christopher.
Well, Chris Brown is so committed to defending his son Jordan that he's lost his job and has gone through all of his finances. Supporters have started a website to help raise money. The Houcks obviously not pleased when they heard about it, saying the focus should be less on Jordan's age and more on the crimes that were committed.
So what's the level of evidence that the prosecution has in here to prove that he did it? Because the father, as you say, clearly is saying my son had nothing to do with it.
That is correct. Jordan's father says he did not do it, as well as Jordan's attorneys. The prosecutors basically have some physical evidence that is being challenged.
Including the
gunpowder, the shell casing, gunpowder on Jordan's clothes. Again, all of this being challenged by Jordan's attorneys.
So he has not been convicted. The question is whether to try him.
That is correct. The question at this point is whether or not to try him as a juvenile or an adult. And you know what's interesting about this case is it's not just this case. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the Supreme Court that is actually right now reviewing whether or not it is cruel and unusual punishment to sentence juveniles to life in prison without parole.
So this is what's not going to be prosperous for our nation. And we've tried to create the collaboration. The Natives have met, our Veterans Coalition, working with a group up in Washington and taking our case study, even with here just yesterday or maybe the day before when I got here, I have a veteran that's his wife's missing. He gets arrested for this. This domestic violence issue is why we created a veterans court here in San Antonio, but now it needs to be expanded into the adverse effects of what we're having here. And what we said then, it wasn't just kids, veterans, but some of these veterans are first responders, as far as what we said at City Hall when they gave them the money for police brutality. They're giving them money for police brutality instead of helping these men and creating a stabilization center. What we worked with the former sheriff candidate that had proposed putting these stabilization centers. You know, when Parma was talking about crisis intervention training, they want to train people to continue this process. You know, you gotta find a way to where this is not going to be what you're seeing here. I mean, these are kids killing out here, and we don't need to not think that even this little baby just recently. I just finished this investigation, and to see these people talk about this. Let me let you watch this.
Well, that's right. Thank you, Erica. And thank you, Mr. District Attorney, for joining us today. We are glad to have you here. I know it's been a busy day for you.
It has. Thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. And this is the first major case that you've been able to work with the San Antonio Police Department. So I know there's a lot involved in that process. And so many people have said that, you know, they're interested in this case and they want to see justice for the baby, for the victim here. And of course, the chief said this is not the end, but just the beginning. But what happens now specifically to the father, Christopher Davila?
Well, let me first say that the San Antonio Police Department and Chief McManus and his team did an incredible job investigating it. I said this morning this was a textbook investigation, and what happens now is Mr. Davila has been charged with several offenses, the most important of which is injury to a child causing serious bodily injury or death by act or omission. That is a first-degree offense. The penalty ranges from 5 to 99 years or life. The bond on that case is $500,000.
And are more charges likely to be added for him?
Well, it may be. That's not the only charge. He's also charged in, he's facing a charge of felon in possession of a weapon because he's got prior conviction. He's also charged with possession of a controlled substance as well as tampering with evidence. So his bonds total over $1 million. Today, the child is undergoing an autopsy, and pending the results of the autopsy, this case could be upgraded to something more serious, an injury to a child.
And what about, there are 2 other people being charged now as well, correct? 2 other family members? Are there other charges likely for them?
Well, we know that there is the mother of Mr. Davila. She's being charged with tampering with evidence as well. There may likely be more charges for other individuals, but so far those are the ones that we've had focused on in the last 48 hours.
So charges for 2 people so far?
Correct.
Okay. And how long could, you mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, how long could Davila go to prison?
He could go to prison for up to life. 99 years or life is the top range of a first-degree offense.
So not the death penalty in this case as it stands?
That's correct, as it stands.
Could that change?
Potentially. What would make this a capital murder charge is the age of the victim. And so we would have to make a decision to seek death, but it's too early to tell whether or not that's appropriate in this case.
And is it possible, as far as you know at this point, that more people could be arrested?
Sure. If we find that the investigation uncovers other participants, other actors, we could certainly charge them. It's important to note that this investigation is not over with. While the San Antonio Police Department has been working diligently, they're not done yet. And so we'll have to wait here in the District Attorney's Office until they submit their final report to us before deciding whom to charge and with what offense.
All right. Well, District Attorney Joe Gonzalez, thank you once again for your time. We appreciate you coming in on such a busy day.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
The death of King J. Davila is heartbreaking, and it shouldn't have happened. It is not right.
Meantime, neighbors brought flowers, toys, and balloons to the spot on the northeast side where officers found the baby's body. Police say the infant's father led them to where he buried that body.
I just don't understand what can go through somebody's mind to do something like that to a baby.
Tonight, San Antonio police say they still don't have all the answers, not even close, in this fake kidnapping story that's captivated the city and captured national attention. Investigators are waiting for the results of an autopsy tonight to figure out exactly how that 8-month-old boy died. The baby's father, Christopher Davila, told police the baby fell off a bed and may have hit a dresser on the way down. The father says he was too scared at the time to call 911, so he buried the 8-month-old's body. Davila, along with the baby's grandmother and second cousin, are now charged with injury to a child. Eyewitness News reporter Roxy Bustamante has been covering this case all week, and she attended the vigil for Baby King tonight. And Roxy, so many people clearly wanted to show their support or remorse for the baby boy, even after police found his body yesterday.
That's right. There had to be more than 300 people out there tonight, and it was very emotional. Many people, including the family, still trying to find some sense of closure.
Hallelujah.
Tears fell just as hard as the rain. Hundreds of people coming together, not only as a community, but as a family.
It is this tragic loss to all of us that has brought us here together.
Mourning the loss of Baby King J. Davila.
I believe that our city will never be the same.
Family members calling it their darkest nightmare.
It breaks my heart to know that we will no longer be able to love on him. But I take comfort in knowing that he's in God's hands now.
Trying to find the strength through prayer, support, and to fight for justice.
We are honored in knowing that Baby King has touched so many lives. And that he has become San Antonio's baby.
Many also pushing for change, demanding harsher punishment in child abuse and neglect cases.
This isn't something that just happened yesterday. It's continuous all throughout the country. Another child is being brutally beaten, murdered, tortured, and this has to stop.
Local churches and organizations working together to give Baby King J a proper resting place. The community hopeful that the ongoing investigation will reveal the truth.
Our hearts are with Baby King and with the people of San Antonio, because we know that everyone is hurting too.
Advocates have also scheduled a balloon release happening this Saturday at the site where baby King Jay was found on the city's northeast side. Roxy Bustamante, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Roxy. And our coverage of this story continues now on KENS5.com. There you can find a complete timeline of the case. Plus, we'll post any new information as soon as we have it in the KENS 5 newsroom.
That's the church over on the west side. We tried to go talk to him because we had given him a lot of case study over the years when they first appointed this church group. And they're at the gun violence symposium they had with the League of Women Voters and some of the things that they had said, you know, the DA needs to be addressing. Or we don't need people that start, I don't know, how can you use God's name in vain? When you already know, we've already taken you, your church, and every one of you, what's happened to our children on the west side. 78207, why it leads the nation on these killings. But now it's become such a pandemic, and now you can't show your true colors. Because you already know about this happening to our children here in San Antonio. You've been known about this. Even the district attorneys, they know about this. That's how they started labeling these kids. But when you have these symposiums and these forums, and this is what I'm calling for. I'm calling for a forum on this PTSD issue in America, so we can start getting to these points of matters and get some remedies in here to help divert this crime. But they had that. I did the review on this. I didn't attend this gun violence. And this was the Sheriff's Department, Jose Menendez, some young lady, Ms. Gordy, Pastor Gordy, is talking about racism and why racism is part of why these police are being trained this way, or why this is being done in the system this way. So let me let you listen to what he said.
Particularly through, can you hear me? Is that better? So we're affiliated with numerous agencies throughout San Antonio and Bexar County. University Hospital, we have a lot of seriously mentally ill people come into our emergency room. We work with the Center for Healthcare Services that operates the crisis unit downtown. There's also been in Bexar County over the last several years a major initiative with both emergency medical services and law enforcement, so that when the police come in contact with someone who's very disturbed, who may present a danger, they are taken to a local psychiatric facility or a emergency room to be evaluated. And Al can comment on this as if I get it wrong, but there's a very specific set of laws that deal with involuntary commitment for psychiatric services. So if a peace officer, a law enforcement officer comes in contact with somebody they believe to be mentally ill or that is exhibiting mental illness, they can do what's called an emergency detention, where they can bring them to a facility to be evaluated, and that generally is 24 to 48 hours. And then a physician, although it's usually a psychiatrist, evaluates that individual at that point, and then a decision is made as to whether the person needs involuntary commitment, and that in Texas is called an order of protective custody. So that is filed, that goes to the judge, and then there's a hearing held, and the judge decides, yes, the person needs to stay in the hospital versus no, they can leave. And then subsequent to that, there's a second hearing. If the patient is then refusing treatment, refusing medication, the judge, the psychiatrist will go back to the court and say, you know, this individual is not taking their medicine, they're not getting better, and then the judge can order what's called a compel medication order, that then the person is given medication, usually antipsychotic medication. Geez, I'm practically eating the thing. Then the judge can order the medication, and typically this is antipsychotic medication, and in typical cases it will take, you know, several days to a couple weeks to reach its full effect. When the patient becomes stabilized, then the psychiatrist can go back to the court and say, okay, this person's ready to leave. The order can be dropped, and then they can leave. Now, there is, I think, among the general population, a huge misconception about psychiatric hospitalization. I think many people still believe we're back in the days of the 19th century or the early 20th century, then when people were committed, they, quote, go to SASH or they go to South Presa, and they stay there for a very extended period of time. Well, San Antonio State Hospital obviously still exists. It today has about 300 beds. For example, back in the 1960s, it had 3,500 beds. So that gives you an idea of the difference between the way we treat mental illness now and the way it was done back then. Once people get to SASH, it's the same rule, basically. Once a patient is stable and is no longer a danger to themselves or others, they can be discharged. Now, there are patients at SASH that are so severe that they never recover to that point, and they may be there for years and years. And as a result, there's an extreme shortage of these beds, or there can be a long waiting list to get into them. As a result, most patients with chronic mental illness tend to be on a cycle where there's an ED, they're committed to a short-term hospital like Laurel Ridge or Nix or University Hospital. They'll stay there for 2 weeks or so, and then they're discharged. While they're referred for outpatient treatment, they don't go to that outpatient treatment. So invariably, they go off their medication. They may, if they have a substance abuse problem, they'll begin to use drugs again, and they're then have another crisis. And it's not unusual to see patients who may have 5 to 10 hospitalizations a year.
I honestly, really, what I'd love to see is Dr. Pliska help us with what are the root causes. Where do kids start getting their heads screwed up? At what age? And how can we prevent that? Because the sooner we help the kids get on the right track, the better, the less work we're going to have to do on the back end of these things. You know what I'm saying? And so what can we do? Is it the foster care system? Is it drugs and alcohol? Is it rehabilitation? How can we help the kids in the household not be so disconnected from reality? Look, when the issue of suicide rate, the teen suicide rate has tripled in Bexar County in the last probably 5 or 6 years. And I went to talk to my teenagers about this. Hey, this is kind of scary. What do you know about this? Oh, yeah, Dad, I know tons of people who've tried to commit suicide. What? Yeah, like nothing. Like I was saying nothing. Like it meant it was no big deal. Yeah. I mean, in 6th grade, little girls are cutting themselves. And I don't understand it. And they're all sharing it on social media. So we have a lot of work to do. I think, look, gun violence is real, but I think it's symptomatic of a larger problem. I think you're right, Al, that there are weapons of mass destruction that should not be in the hands of everyday citizens. Obviously, they realize that with the pressure on the bump stock situation, but no one needs a magazine with 50 rounds in it to defend their house. There are just certain things that need to be common sense.
I think I like that. I think the school-based mental health services is a really good place to start. One of the big barriers that keeps particularly working families from seeking mental health care, you get a call from the school, your child has, said he wanted to hurt himself, or he got in he's been depressed. Well, the parent has to, go to their insurance panel, call somebody, make multiple calls, finally get an appointment, take off work. Boss says, no, you can't take off work. It just delays the whole process. A lot of people give up. And if those services were directly in the school, the child could be served, but also the family could come and get family therapy. I think that would really be a core preventative measure. I think at the other end of the severity spectrum, for those kids with serious mental illness, we probably need to invest a little bit more in intensive treatment or residential treatment. Really, Texas, we have Waco Center for Youth. We have Waco Center for Youth, who is the only long-term residential facility that the state runs. We have other residential treatment facilities, but for those kids that really need that intensive long-term care, that's a definite gap in the system, and that's where we could really prevent kids from going into a lifelong course of substance abuse, mental illness, or criminal behavior.
So now you hear him, he tells you it's 4% of gun violence has a mental health problem. But then later in the program, as far as when you listen to this and where I went and edited it, and Jose Menendez questioned him as far as why these kids are killing each other out here. And where did we get to that point? But yet he did say that they're the vendors that are feeding us in our society, why they built that mental health center next to the jail. I already showed you that 2 or 3 years ago. But this is what's now has our city as one of the most violent cities in the United States. We went in 2016, after they covered up the report that was in the session, and now all over our city. I mean, watch this.
1 man dead, 3 men in custody after a shooting on the city's west side. We had this as late breaking news at 5 o'clock.
Police responding to the 200 block of Monclova a little after 4 o'clock today. That's near San Jacinto. This is still a very active scene right now. Investigators there searching for answers and evidence. Our Sarah Costa has been working to get more information. She joins us live with what police are saying about this right now. Sarah?
That victim was fatally shot in this alleyway right behind me. You can still see, like you guys said, a very active scene. Police are on scene searching for any possible weapons and evidence. According to SAPD, that man was taken to a hospital in critical condition where he later died. Police say they got the call around 4:15 this afternoon to North San Jacinto and Monclova. When they arrived, they found the victim shot and were able to search the area for the three suspects who are all now in custody. Police say there was some kind of confrontation between the 3 men and the victim. They believe one of the suspects shot the victim. However, police say they still have not found a weapon. It's why they are still on scene searching behind us. We actually saw one of their canines come out to help them in that search. Now, as for a description of any of the people involved, police did not give us that information. They just told us that victim was a man in his 50s. As for how much longer they're going to be out here, they're saying hopefully not too much longer. There still are a lot of residents trying to get into their homes. Police say hopefully the scene will clear shortly. Live from the west side, I'm Sarah Costa, KSAT 12 News.
A 19-year-old was shot several times on San Antonio's east side.
And now detectives are working hard at this hour to find the person who pulled the trigger. Eyewitness News reporter Marvin Hurst has been tracking the shooting overnight for us. He's live on the scene right now. And Marvin, do police have any leads at all? Do they know who this guy is or where he is?
Well, let me start from the beginning here. Police sent some detectives over here. A detective sent police over here to the 300 block of Gabriel looking for a crime scene because this guy is fighting for his life. He's 19 years old. He's been shot multiple times. They established this as the initial crime scene, and it's right across the street from Wheatley Middle School. This is video that we just fed into KENS 5. It's fresh video, and you can see police working the scene here to establish it. This is where they believe the shooting happened. Officers were initially called out to another scene at around 12:30 at East Commerce and North New Braunfels Avenue. A 19-year-old male had been shot 3 to 4 times. He was taken to SAMC in critical condition. I'm told the victim, once they got him to the hospital, they discovered more gunshot wounds than they had anticipated. He may have been shot upwards of 7 times, so 5 to 7 times, they're telling me possibly. So we are continuing to work the details on this story to find out more about this story, and when we find out, we'll bring it to you in another live report. Reporting live on the city's east side, Marvin Hurst, KENS 5, Eyewitness News.
A San Antonio police officer is on leave tonight after shooting and killing a suspect earlier today.
Police say that man grabbed an officer's taser, then fired it at police before he was killed. The deadly encounter happened on the northeast side off Loop 410 and I-35. Investigators spent more than 3 hours processing the scene.
Eyewitness News reporter Henry Ramos was there all day and throughout this evening. He joins us live now. So Henry, how do police say this encounter started?
Jeff and Deborah, first off, police say the man stole a car, was parked on the access road, and was trying to take off the license plate. What happened next cost him his life.
A deadly crime scene on a rainy stretch of roadway.
Fired multiple rounds.
A man in his mid-30s, now dead.
North Property Crimes detective recognized the individual as a serial burglar.
Police say the suspect stole this Cadillac and was acting strange.
For their own protection, they went to handcuff him.
When they tried to take him into custody, he resisted, and an officer attempted to tase him, but the man somehow wrestled the stun gun away.
And tased the officer. And the cover officer there fired multiple rounds, and the suspect went down.
The suspect died at the scene. The officer tased is okay and has been on the force for 14 years.
And we also did some digging here. According to online records, this all from SAPD last year, there were about 10 officer-involved incidents. In regards to this incident, today, the officer who fired that fatal shot is now on administrative duty. We are still awaiting for police to release the name of the suspect. Live on the Northwest Side, Henry Ramos, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.
These are kids. These are young men. Do you think we don't know where this came from? And we're going to get up and say something now. We have to. If we're going to have the equities of our community safety being steered by the management of the city that's been doing this to our society, I mean, how much of the budget went into policing? Are we in like the 60th percentile? Shouldn't that be going down, not up? I mean, if you're a civil person here, but we're having to deal with this, you know, and even not just here. I just did a report in Houston, Texas with the chief. Let me watch this.
We're going to find these cowards, that coward that got on that roof.
Houston's police chief promising action after a rooftop ambush that killed 2 people and injured 2 more.
Our Janelle Fort joins us live from the neighborhood on the east side where it happened. And Janelle, the gunman is on the run.
Lisa and Brandy, investigators have surveillance video from the homes in this neighborhood, and right now they're reviewing each of them to get a clear idea of who exactly they're looking for. We spoke with Chief Acevedo. He didn't mince his words when it comes to this shooting. He says that gunman used an assault-style rifle to, quote, hunt those victims like deer. Now, here's what we know so far about what happened here yesterday. Police say this started as a brawl with a big group of people yesterday afternoon, and police say this isn't the first time they've had a run-in. A few days ago, they got into a fight here at the same intersection here on Eastbrook. Police say they decided to come back to settle the score, but things took a turn when those punches turned into gunshots. Neighbors described the scene as a war zone, gunshot after gunshot going off. The shooter perched on top of the roof of a home abandoned following Hurricane Harvey. Now, in total, 4 victims in this shooting. An 18-year-old man died here at the scene. A 21-year-old man died at the hospital. Another man was badly hurt, and a woman was shot in the knee. They believe that gunman got away in a black Tahoe. And this morning, police are not only looking for the shooter, but they're trying to figure out exactly why those 2 groups were fighting in the first place. Sending it back to you guys in the studio.
These kids are getting killed by people on the roofs. I mean, I've already showed you what's happening in Dallas with these veterans, Louisiana, and this is what was sort of shocking when he said 4% as far as the University of Texas Health Sciences, Plaziska. I think they're related to people with the League of Women Voters. To say that the gun violence only has 4% mental health, come on. But now you know, and we really, really need you to call your representatives. Call these people now and just tell them to stop using these drugs on American children. They're not making our community safe, but, you know, I don't know how it happens here. How the hell can you put a kid on these pills? I mean, we're watching veterans kill themselves because of these pills, and they're #1 in domestic violence today. And instead of helping them, I'm hearing they're going to put monitors on them, or they might even start using chips because we have technology in our society that somebody pumped in when they took our right to vote away. But thank you, San Antonio. Thank you.
Sé que un día volverá está peinando.